Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about FernGully, The Last Rainforest from 1992. When I was a kid, when this came out, this was kind of looked at as sort of lame. Its environmental message was really corny. It's about saving the trees. It was 1992, so we all felt environmental messages were as important and were kind of cheesy and overdoing it and things like that. But I think in a lot of ways, because that issue has become more serious, even though it was serious at the time, we probably should have taken it more seriously. A lot of the wording and how this film has aged in the right direction. Particularly, there's the end card, not that this is a spoiler at all, where it says for our children and our children's children, which I hear people say all the time about the environment now. I don't know if I'd seen that phrase. I'm sure FernGully didn't invent it. I don't know. To me, I think that kind of helps this film age correctly, and it makes this film less cheesy. And a lot of things you'd be like, oh, brother, just because you're cutting down some trees, calm down, guys. We shouldn't, but who cares? And now I'm like, no, you really shouldn't cut down those trees. What the hell? You should have shrunk that guy and given him a better perspective. This is really messed up. I now don't feel that it is very cheesy. When I saw it in the 90s, I felt that way. When I saw it in the 2000s, I sort of felt that way. Now, I am like, what was wrong with all of us? FernGully is primarily trying to teach us an environmental message that we definitely all should be listening to. And it completely changed my perspective on this. At the same time, it's very much a movie from 1992 with the music and everything else, and it's very much of its time. But I think the core of it, and it's not a perfect movie or anything, is actually in more of the right place than you probably realize it is. I was actually cool enough I never get sent stuff by anyone, so it was cool to get the FernGully Blu-ray, which just came out by Shout Factory. They were nice enough to send it to me so I could review it, so that's very nice of them. This video is not sponsored by them. They just sent me one, and I feel really cool about it. So, I can feel sort of neat because of that. So, thank you to them. It's really nice. It's a good Blu-ray. The transfer is really wonderful. I actually watched scenes of a previous transfer just to compare, just because I was curious how good and it looks actually really fucking good. To be honest with you, it looks beautiful on the Blu-ray. The two things that I would recommend on here are both music videos. One is they have the music video of If I'm Gonna Eat Somebody with Tone Loc, and he performs with a bunch of kids, which is weird. From the guy who previously did Funky Cole Medina. I like Tone Loc. More so Wild Thing, I guess more people know her from that. And CJ and the Bear, I believe. And then they have one for Behind the Voice, a multi-angle sing study with Toxic Love. And you actually get to see Tim Curry sing Toxic Love, which is great. It's a pretty cool thing. I didn't get to listen to the commentary or anything. There's a lot of cool special features. If you're a fan of this, I actually think you'd be into it if you're into FernGully. So, yeah, and it was cool to watch a Tone Loc music video that I did not know existed and is super early 90s in beautiful Blu-ray. was interesting. I was like, wow, this is better than this should ever look. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Shout Factory. This, like I was talking about the music in this, I think, is very 90s and very 1992. The early 90s is interesting because it's pretty much before gangster rap and Nirvana happened and before alternative and gangster rap and basically all the styles and the production that you get to used to in 90s music from there until teen pop took over at the very end. This was about to change. 92 is the year The Chronic comes out, Nirvana's Nevermind comes out. Things change this year. FernGully was not when you're in production for a while, what was cool with the orchestra hits, and I don't want to say this is New Jack Swing, but it's the vibe, I guess, of New Jack Swing or that kind of hip hop production was outdated by the time, I guess, this even came out. And by the time I saw it on video, I remember people were sort of laughing at it, saying, oh, it's so 80s and stuff. We were 9, so it wasn't amazing critical breakdowns there. But at first when I saw it, I thought it was cheesy. And like, I think the other time I saw it in the 2000s, I thought, it's not my thing necessarily. Now I am cool with that kind of production, and I kind of like it. Baddie Rap is no one's favorite, but it's still Robin Williams, so is that really so bad? Toxic Love, I think Tim Curry brings it. It's certainly a wonderful piece. I like the Tone Loc song the most. He's not in any of the rest of the movie, which I don't really understand, unless he's like in the background and I missed that. Also, like, weird that a kid's movie has Tone Loc and Cheech and Chong in it, but hey, here we are, FernGully. But I kind of like the dated songs now, to be honest. Like, that aged better because I've accepted this era more. Kind of like Michael Jackson, Dangerous kind of thing. So, New Jack Swing, I guess. But not really. I don't think Teddy Riley was involved in this. FernGully is about a fairy who lives in a wonderful rainforest. She doesn't really know much beyond that. She's kind of training her magical powers, and she meets a human, Zach, who's helping cut down trees or mark the trees to be cut down, and she shrinks him because he's about to get crushed by a tree. That, of course, changes perspective on the environment. While at the same time, the people who are cutting down the trees release Nexus, who's this great evil who they had previously taken out, but then he forms his powers with pollution, making an evil thing that could destroy the forest, basically. One thing I find interesting about this is directed by Bill Croyer, who was an animator at Disney, worked pre-Renaissance. Apparently he worked there, and he didn't want to work on Black Cauldron, which, fair. So he left, and this is his only film he ever directed. He directed other things. The opening to Bobby's World was one of them, from his Croyer Films, production company. I've heard this compared a lot to, the Disney films of the era, the like Little Mermaid, things like that. What I think is different, I think you can compare it to Little Mermaid because you have a fish out of water story. That's not a pun, but that the thing with this is it's not so much I think from Zach's perspective, some parts it's more from Krista's perspective, and so it's more like her watching someone new to her culture and explaining things, while he sort of takes advantage of her in terms of like believing that the trees that have access are protected and stuff like that. And this is so much more about world building, in fact, much more than about like Nexus and the conflict with that I almost like, I don't think this film was made to make an animated series and a sequel, because the sequel came significantly later, but now it's a lot of world building. I was a little surprised by how much detail and how much stuff is in there, and I know it is based on a book and things like that, but like, you could have not adapted it this way. In this way, it feels like you're getting into the world and the forest, and like, people have said like it really sets up the environment and that you want to save this whole environment, but I think it does it in a way which traditionally is world building, and I'm honestly surprised there isn't more of a franchise for this thing, because it introduces everyone so well. I was kind of like, felt a little more character piecey. I think it kind of takes the Disney thing and goes, well, we really actually care about this location, not just these few people and like just their personal journey. It's beyond that, and you could say that is because of the message of the film, which is about saving the environment and being a pro-environmental message. It makes a lot of sense to do it that way. I actually think it's a lot more interesting because you have these various directors around this time, Swan Princess, so forth, making films that are like in the not exactly Disney kind of things, or kind of like Disney ripoff type of things, and they're not made at Disney, they're made somewhere else. I also find it interesting in this era where like you get all these animators together to work on one film, and it wouldn't be a certain studio, so you get kind of this weird mix, this kind of weird like offshoot little film, and it's not part of just the same studio style, which I like that kind of era. I wish we'd do that more. I really liked Robin Williams in this. It's Robin Williams doing an animated voice. I don't apparently Jeffrey Katzenberg did not wasn't really happy because he signed on to this first, but he was then going to do Aladdin, and he didn't really like that, and he messed with the film a lot. He's not credited on the box, and I couldn't find much info. I remember hearing, because he had so much problems with Aladdin, I'm assuming that's why he's not credited on the box. I assume there'd be some behind the scenes story. I actually couldn't find one, but it's cool that Shout Factory on the Blu-ray didn't, and it seems like he's kind of not credited in some places. I'm assuming it's because of Disney's fuckery, and they did like mess with the production of this, apparently like taking away production offices and things like that, which is unfortunate, especially considering it was an environmental film and things like that. One thing that was a criticism that was levied against it was that this is a film that's made, animated with paper, and paper comes from trees, and it's a film that's against cutting down trees. I actually heard that criticism when I was a kid about Captain Planet. They're like, how can you have a Captain Planet action figure and watch Captain Planet, and like having there be a cartoon of Captain Planet is not pro the environment because you're using electricity, you're using technology, all those things are using resources to show a message that we should be more careful about resources. And, I'd say as a kid, I always thought like the good outweighed the bad. And I guess you kind of just sort of hope that these messages that you're spreading using those things and not being very environmental mean more than, literally not listening to your message by making it. But you just kind of hope for the best there, I guess. I think you just hope that it sort of works out in the end, which, wishful thinking maybe. I like FernGully more this time. My daughter wasn't into it or watching it. She didn't watch the movie though. I do think you could maybe show it to kids, but it's gonna feel very dated with the music. That's the one thing. I think the messaging and the writing and like the film itself is sort of fine, but the music is so 1992. That's something that holds it back. But I mean, it's like an animated film with Tim Curry and Robin Williams both singing, and Tone Loc, by the way. And that to me is pretty cool. I think that's like, I was like, it's got a stacked cast. Also, Christian Slater's there. The designs can be a little all over the place in terms of the characters in some places, but I do think this film has more of its heart in the right place than probably people recognize at the time. I don't think it's like a perfect movie. Like, it's an interesting way to structure something like that, but I don't know if it entirely works. And I think that's also maybe why it's not, since it doesn't fit into those structures, it almost feels like that's what made it not memorable. But I also think that's probably what made it maybe more memorable for me, or more enjoyable this time, is noticing how it played with that kind of genre. It like sort of understands it's in this Disney genre, but I think like maybe like you do wonder when people mess with the genre and it doesn't stick out to you. Would it have been better if you just blatantly ripped them off instead of ripping them off and like doing your own thing? I think it works for what the overall message was of the film, but it doesn't really make me entirely want to revisit it, another time after watching it a couple of times throughout my life. But if my kids did ever want to watch it, I think it's a good film for kids. It's a good film for families and stuff like that, if you can get them into it. But I do feel like that's a bit of a hurdle there. I don't know if it means that much in terms of animation history of the 90s. It means it's certainly a film that everyone knew about in the 90s, and one that I wanted to review and revisit at some point because of that. People remember parts of it, but I do feel like maybe had it expanded further, had it done more with this, maybe we'd remember it more. Or maybe it was just trying to do what it was trying to do. Maybe it was just trying to tell us something about the environment, and maybe we should have just, listened and understood it, rather than kind of calling it cheesy at the time. I don't think this film is as cheesy and deserves maybe a bit of a better reputation, but I don't know if it crosses over to be that, I don't think it crosses over to be like a great animated movie, but it is, I would say, decent to good at trying to spread a pretty important message, which I guess we all kind of rolled our eyes out at the time, and now I guess we get to, sweat and realize maybe we should have listened a little closer to FernGully back in the day. Alright, so if you've seen FernGully, The Last Rainforest, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.